Hi guys, welcome to my tutorial. Bear with me, it's my first, but since the responses on Facebook were so many and you guys showed interest to have a tutorial to show you how to rig, I'm going to try to do this. So we will rig with the Maitreya body kit specifically for Second Life, and I'm going to be using Maya, the 2017 version. So if you have a different one, I assume the basics will be the same anyway, but maybe one or the other setting will be slightly different, but you should be able to find it either way. So when you get the kit from Maitreya, you get the body only. You have to apply for hands and for feet separately, which I did, and I imported those into the scene so we have them all in one. They are still separate. You can see I can click them on and off. I made special layers or layers for them. And when I imported the hands, which were bento already, it also gave me the bento skeleton. But you can see that I deleted part of the bento skeleton already, because you can, if you going to bind to the whole thing, you won't be able to upload to Second Life because it's going to be too many bones and the viewer will not accept and will not give you the option even to upload it. So you can either delete the bones you don't need, or you can bind already to exactly the bones you want to have. I do it this way. It was easier for me. I just got used to this kind of workflow. So I deleted the face bones, I deleted the wing bones and the tail bones. And yeah, so my hands and body and feet are still separate. We're going to change that later on because for some things it's easier if everything is actually one piece. It makes it easier to rig, but for some pieces it's just not needed. I'm going to start with a flared dress that I made for the arcade actually back in last March in 2018. It was the Rockabilly collection, and but it's a nice dress to show you the basics on it because it has some details but not too many, so it's a good thing to start with. Usually when I create, I always leave myself a complete single layer of the mesh that I will use as a basic rig. But since the creation process of that dress is already done, I'm going to show you on the finished item, and basically we're going to reverse the process. So we will create a single layer out from that we will use as a basic rig because it's much easier to use on a single layer than on a double layer and details on. Like this has in the back, it has a little bow and all that kind of things we don't want for the basic rig. So what we're going to do, we're first going to create or duplicate it and create a new layer with the duplicated dress that I will call basic rig. And let's give it a color to find it quickly. So you can highlight that and the other one as well. And now we're going to make sure the other one is close, so you work on the right layer and the other one doesn't get deleted or changed. So what we're going to do now, first we turn off the bento skeleton so it's not in the way. And we're going to separate the layers of this one. So I'm going to select those inner layers. And until both layers are separate. Like usually I wouldn't do this because I would have the single layer already before I even extruded it, which I would use. But to show you the whole thing, I'm going through this right now. Feel free to fast forward when it's going to be too slow. Let's see, there's something still connected. This we won't need. This is going to go to. Sometimes it's also easier to use the UV to actually delete what you don't need. So we switch to shell, and then I just select the inner shells, and I shift click to select more than one, and then I just hit delete. We have still one in the back. Well, I could have just turned off the body so it's easier to see. I'll delete those two. This looks already good. Yeah. So we have a single layer here. We're going to go back to object mode. And this is going to be, make sure you save things in between so it, if it crashes, which Maya likes to do, you still have your files there. So now we have a clean single layer that we can start binding to the skeleton. I'm going to click the dress, then shift click select the pelvic bone, and that will select the whole skeleton. We are already in the rigging menu, and then we'll go to skin, and I personally prefer the interactive bind. I'm going to show you the settings I use for that. Bind to joint hierarchy, to closest distance, and it's important that it's set to classic linear, and maximum influence is 4, because Second Life doesn't accept more than 4 anyway. And then we just hit bind skin. So now it's already bound to the skeleton. You can see by moving, that was the wrong joint. So now if we move this, you can see it's moving. Obviously not with the body because we haven't copied the weights of the body yet. So we're going to set this back to 0. And then we click the body, shift click the dress, and then we go to skin. And again, the settings here are important to copy skin weights, and the settings here are closest point on surface, and the influence association is to closest joint. And then you hit copy. Now this will look already much different if we're going to check on the bone. So you see it's already moving with the body, but we have quite a bit of a distortion here where your texture is going to be very stretched out and very uneven. Also, if you're going to use or try to move a leg to the front, then you see it's all breaking the mesh here. So these parts have to be adjusted manually. We're going to set this back to 0 first. Going to stretch it out in order to pull it to the side a little. And we're going to start with the bottom of the skirt. Again, here sometimes it's easier to select the single vertices that you want to affect with the UV layers. But here we have overlapping mesh because I use different materials. So it's going to select more than I actually want. What I can do now is just, because I won't need the UVs in this thing, so I can separate the shells. Let's do it this way. And it's going to be easier to select everything else. So we move that to the side. And now, if I'm going to go to vertex and select vertices here, you see it's going to select the same vertices inside the scene too. So it's easier to control from here, especially if you will have sometimes a double layer that sometimes cannot be avoided, but in this case. So it's much easier to select like this and it's more even. So we're going to select a few rows here. Oops, no, it didn't. That was too much. Doesn't let me hit the row now. So like that. Probably one more. This. Yeah. No, we don't need that much at the top, so those we can deselect again. A little bit less. Something like that. Maybe a bit more at this side so we can smooth these a little bit out. Yeah, this looks good. Here we can go one row less. Do not select too wide in here. If you go very wide, then it will give you smooth weights, but the leg will start poking through quickly. So this area is quite sensitive, and to find a good balance of how much you smooth and how much you leave of the original weight. Here I already see where the line is, which vertices I need to select from this part to have the bottom as well. So we're just gonna click those. This looks already pretty good. Yeah, the back we'll do later. So when you have the vertices selected, you go right click and to Paint Skin Weight Tools. And sometimes Maya deletes the vertices, but if you hit Z, they will come back. And you will stay in the paint weight mode. Now, everything we're going to paint or to smooth is going to affect only the selected vertices, the reason why we did this before. We're going to start from the pelvis bone, and I hit flood while smooth here is selected. So you already see what it's doing. It smooths out the vertices here, the weights on the vertices. And then we go one by one. Don't smooth out too much at once. Again, here we're going to use flood. And you'll see already how the vertices are moving to the other side about 4 or 5 times. The knee doesn't affect anything in here, the lower leg neither. So that we can close. Then we have the upper leg on the other side, and we will also smooth this out. And you see already it's getting a much nicer shape. I can try this side again a little bit more. Okay. This is already pretty good. The texture is going to look nice. Then you always can correct it manually and set your tool, leave it at smooth, and just paint here where you see where it's a little bit distorted, and just smooth over there. Pelvis, this we had. So this is going to move nicely. Now if we turn this back to 0, to the original position, you can't see anything when it's in the original position, but when you start moving, you already see this is much nicer. Now this part here is still a little bit edgy. So we would change this to not too much, because like when you put the foot up here, or the leg actually, if you smooth it too much, it's going to clip into the skin later on, because that's just the way that the body weights are spread. So sometimes you have to compromise on specific poses or specific animation where it won't be 100%, but you just try to achieve the best possible. So when she's going to be walking, it's going to look like this. Yeah, we're going to turn this a little bit lower, then it's easier to see. And then just smooth in this area. Let's see what else affects there. pelvis a little bit. Rigging takes time. There's no way around it to do that really, really quick. It's the reason why many stick only to one size, because the resizing alone already takes time and the rigging starts from 0 on every single size. So this already looks much better, so it doesn't really get hard edges. And we're going to do the same on the other side. So what's this area that needs a little bit more smoothing? Okay. We're going to turn this back to 0. Where's my, here. And now we're going to do the same for the back. So again, you see the distortion here. We're going to do this manually in this case, just with the brush tool. The pelvis first, so you see the difference. The flood actually saves some time. And here we brush this part in. See, when you do this manually, or like brushing it the whole time, it's just going to take forever. This is why I love the flood tool. So we're going to vertices, going to select the vertices we want here. I'm just going to select by row and then deselect the top that I don't need. So as you see, you can do it either via the UV map or inside whatever. This is all selected. Yeah. Now you have to be careful that, because I didn't have camera selection on, so it selected more than I wanted, which I'm just going to deselect. And here we actually don't need from here. All this can go. So these won't be affected. There we have some left. That should be it. Okay, now we can work with the flood tool again, just to make this symmetrical. See, and since I'm working on a single layer only, I don't have to double check that both layers are selected, because if you have 2 layers, you need to select exactly the same vertices on both, otherwise it's not going to work. So we're going back to paint layer, and now when I hit flood, see, it's much easier. It's doing it basically for me, and it affects only the selected area. Then we're going to the upper leg of the other side and do the same thing and flood this until it's more or less evened out. Let's check the pelvis. Not too much here. This is all fine. You already see that actually the line is pretty smooth up here. So let's see how this is going to, see, this is already much smoother. Okay, so this is basically the bottom. And we're going to set the bones back to 0. Here we have a little bit more rotation. Make sure you get back to your pose. Otherwise you're going to run into issues. I'm going to hide the skeleton because at the top it's just going to be in the way. Here it's more a thing of a manual procedure to actually get nice an even weight at the chest, especially when the breasts are going to be resized in Second Life, so it's not going to get distorted at this area too much. You have a few weights here you have to pay attention to. First is the chest, and you see this doesn't look very even already, but you can do that with a flood tool as well, but here I prefer to do that manually to have a little bit more control and to have it a little bit more smooth in one area. So we're going to smooth this part out. This looks already much better. Then the pecs, same. You want this to be very, very, very smooth, but not lose too much of the area, otherwise it's going to look weird and going to stretch in areas where it's not supposed to stretch. And the right side. Theoretically, you could also mirror the weights here, but we're just going through it right now like this. Okay, so this looks already pretty good. And I realized for the Maitreya one, the belly one also needs to be smooth. That just came with the experience, really. There's no specific rule to that. That torso and belly needs to be smooth as well. Okay. What we can check now, if you select, we need to go back to object mode, you can select the pec bone. Here it says scale to 0.05. If you set it to a little bit higher, like let's say 0.8, you already see what's happening. It's going to increase, so you get at least a rough idea of what's happening. This is already not too bad. You see it's still staying around the breast and it's growing accordingly. We do that for the other side as well to check. Yep, that's already pretty good. What we don't like is the middle part here, so this we have to smooth out again. Oops. So we're going back to, you can leave it in this size basically to see what you're doing, and then just go, let's see what is affected here. Yeah, if you do this manually now, you basically won't be even able to get in there. So now the flood tool comes handy again. We select the area we want, more or less symmetrical, like this. Double check that nothing in the back is selected that we don't need. And now we're going back to the paint weight tool. We are already on our chest bone. Smooth is selected, and then we'll hit flood. And you see it's going to be a little bit more even out. I still don't like the fact that this part here is coming inside. Let's see if we can get that right with the pec bones. Oh, this is already getting better, so we flood a little bit here. And we flood from the other side, and you see already it's getting better. And it's just only that area here. So we get it smooth. This already looks pretty good to me. Maybe the chest once more. You have to go really bone by bone. It will take time. But this looks already nice. Okay, so we're going back to our skeleton, and we need to set the bone back to the original size of 0.05. And the same for the other side. Okay, and we're back to the shape we had before. Now, again, this is more or less specific to the Maitreya kit. I always check the shoulders as well, because usually this should not be affected when I pull down my arm, but you see what it does. Now, this is something you have to decide on. Really, it depends on the style. If you're okay with it pulling it down like this, because the actual way your avatar is going to stand in Second Life is going to look like that. It's something I designed this one in T pose. Sometimes I design in A pose, so it doesn't even get distorted that much, because this is what happened if you do too much in T pose in that area, because it's a little bit squashed. So either we would basically make this area just more narrow, but I would try with the weights just to keep it a little bit more away from the shoulder. So let's see what weights influence in here. We use the smooth. This we're going to do manually, because this is a little bit, yeah, going to, and you're gonna paint to smooth this out on both sides. You see it's already coming back a little. Then we need, let's see what else affects here. That was a chest we just did, so now we have to go to the arms itself. And we smooth out basically every weight we come across that affects this area here. Alright, see, there's too much shoulder weight on that part. So if we pull this back, again, if you do it too much, you risk the clipping, especially if you work very close to the body, as this dress is in the top. So it's always a bit of a compromise. That's already not bad. Okay. So now we're setting it back to the original position, which was 0. And now you have your base rig for the dress. What we will do now is going to copy the single layer rig to the double layer, or to your final version that you want to upload to Second Life. Okay, so our basic rig is on this layer that we can hide for now, and then we use the final layer that we want to upload, and we will bind this one to the skeleton first. The settings are safe from last time, and now we will hide this layer and show the basic rig. Select that. If you don't see, now in this case you can see because the bow is here in the back, that's actually easy to see. We will shift click and select the new layer, and then we will go to skin and copy skin weights with the same settings we did earlier from the body. Now we will deselect and hide the basic rig, and now the one that we have here, you already see, you can see it's double layer because if I zoom out, it shows you the thicker lines, and it actually moves nicely without much of distortion. So we're going back to 0. I'm going to check here once more, that's fine too. Also back to 0. And then we're going to select the dress, export selection, and we will export it as, say, rockabilly test. As a DAE file and hit export. It takes a few seconds. And then we can upload it to Second Life. I will start the viewer and I'll be back with the upload. So here we are in Second Life. Welcome to my platform. And we're going to upload the mesh model. I'm going to call it, put this in here. That's actually fine. Leave it like that. And change this to 0. Upload options include skin weights, calculate weights, and then wait until we get the upload. Okay, so it uploaded, and now we can try it on. Go to the recent. And then we take the one underneath off. And here we go. So when we walk, it actually moves pretty nice. You see it still clips a tiny bit when you walk, but that just can't happen at that length. And even if she puts her legs and crosses them, it still works. We can also check the size of the breasts, how they react, like if we bump that up to all 100. See, it still looks fine here. So this is all good. I would recommend that you actually upload to the beta grid and try, because in the beginning you simply need a few times to upload, to try and see. It's really trial and error in the beginning, how much you have to smooth where. This was just the basic, but each style is individually done and needs individual weights. So there's not a rule that applies to everything, but you get the basic idea of it. And if you like this, maybe you can leave me a message, and if there's anything you would like to see covered, I can add and make a little series out of it if it helps you. So yeah, that was it for now. Have a great day, guys, and happy rigging.